Pray that you'll be in attendance. Once again, that is Mark 8, verses 14 through 21. We ask that everyone stand for the readings of God's holy word. That's Mark 8, verses 14 through 21. We'll be reading the New Living Version, or New Living Translation. Word of God says, the disciples had forgotten to bring bread, except for one loaf they had with them in the boat. Be careful, Jesus warned them. Watch out for the yeast of the Pharisees and that of Herod. They discussed this one another and said, it is because we have no bread. Aware of their discussion, Jesus asked them, why are you talking about having no bread? Do you still not see or understand? Are your hearts hardened? Do you have eyes but fail to see, and ears but fail to hear? And don't you remember? Do me a favor real quick. Look at your neighbor and say, don't you remember? When I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000, how many basketfuls of pieces did you pick up? 12, they replied. And when I broke the 7 loaves for the 4,000, how many basketfuls of pieces did you pick up? They answered 7. He said to them, do you still not understand? You may be seated in the presence of God. On the way to your seat, simply want to put this thought on your mind, and that is simply, y'all done forgot. Y'all done forgot. There are 2 illnesses or diseases that are very prevalent in our society in today's time. And both of them attack the state of our minds. One is Alzheimer's and another one is dementia. Funny thing about these 2 illnesses, they attack our minds and they rob us of some sacred memories and sacred moments. But yet what I've come to understand and seeing and realizing some folks having to deal with these 2 things, it never seems to rob them of who God is or what they've learned about God, his son, Jesus Christ, nor his Holy Spirit. Matter of fact, oftentimes you can hear them quoting scriptures, singing hymns and singing songs that you may not have heard in recent years, but yet it still is in them and they remember every single bit of it. Yet here it is, some of us, we are in our good strength, in our right mind, able to walk around, move around, sing, talk, pray, dance, and yet we've forgotten all about who we should be serving. We've forgotten all about what he's done for us. We've forgotten all about who he really is. And today, as we look at this particular text inside of Mark 8, what you'll find is you're just like God's disciples. They too had gotten to a place where it seemed they had forgotten who they were with. As we look at this text, find that verse 14, before we get to verse 14, Jesus Christ found himself coming into Decapolis, which was known to be Gentile territory. Found himself entering to this space and performing a miracle, yet still having the Pharisees to question him and ask him to do something for them. Here's what I want to tell you today. There are some people in your life, no matter what you do or how you do it, no matter how many times God uses you to bless somebody else and they are able to witness it, they will never believe that you are who God says you are. So what you got to understand is when this happens, it's simply a sign unto you that it's time for you to move on and do greater things because God still has work for you to do. God and Jesus understood this. Jesus went on about his way, and now he's on board the ship with his disciples, and his disciples realized we forgot to bring bread. And in my mind, I can simply imagine the journey that they were embarking on and things that they were getting ready to do and the place they were getting ready to go, there was nowhere in sight where they could get anything for nutrition. So in their minds, they begin to wonder, what is we going to do? Yeah, y'all heard me right. What is we going to do? Begin to wonder, and they begin to ponder, and in the midst of it all, Jesus says unto them, be careful. Jesus says, be careful. Say it one more time, BJ. Jesus says, be careful. And here's the truth for all of us in this place today. At some point in time in your life, you've heard God utter those same words unto you. Be careful. Be careful. What is it that we need to be careful for? I'm glad you asked, because my guy Jesus, he didn't stop talking. He said, be careful. And then he warned them about the yeast of the Pharisees and of Herod. Here's why I love reading when Jesus talks and when he's talking to others. I love it because Jesus doesn't take things you're not familiar with and try to get you to understand, but he uses those things that you are very much so acquainted with to talk to you, but yet at the same time, he can leave you puzzled to where you really don't understand what's being said at all. And here's the crazy part about that. You got to understand, in order for you to really understand what God is saying, what Jesus is saying when they begin to talk to you, you first got to have regular conversation. You can't understand somebody's lingo or their language if you don't have regular conversation with them. Things that they say will come off to you as being strange, uncommon, and making absolutely no sense at all. So, matter of fact, what I want to do now is take a little time to help you understand what the yeast is that Jesus really was talking about. Because although, the bread that we love to eat nowadays, it has a pinch of yeast in it. It helps it to do what we like for bread to do. Rise, and even gives it a different kind of taste to where we can really enjoy just nibbling and snacking on a piece of bread. But here's what I need you to understand. Jesus wasn't talking about that kind of yeast. But just in case you need to understand a few things about yeast. Yeast was actually discovered over millions of years ago. And it's said to be a microorganism that is labeled as being nothing but bacteria. But here's the crazy thing about it. There was one species of yeast when they discovered it. But today there are 1,500 different species of yeast. You want to know what this tells me, Michelle? This tells me that only a small little bit of yeast, and it can mutate into other things. So here's what I need you to understand. For every time that you thought that you were okay because it was only a little bit, that little bit has a habit of mutating into a lot. Every time that you thought that it was just a little gossip, that little gossip has a way of mutating into a lot of mess and confusion. Every time you thought that it was just a little hate, it ain't really that bad. I can't stand them, but it's not as bad as it once was. That little bit of hate can cause your heart to turn cold and harden towards your fellow brothers or your sisters. Every single time you thought to yourself, it was just a little innocent thought. I thought about him. I thought about her. Well, here's a news flash for you. Just a little bit of lust, if it lingers long enough, can mutate into something that you no longer can fight, and you find yourself giving in to lustful desires. Just in case you found yourself in a situation where you thought about it and you found yourself talking about your very best friend behind their backs, and you said, you know what, that was just a moment. That was just a little bit of two-facedness. But that little bit, that little bit, that small little bit, it was just a little small shot, just a little small drink, that small little bit. If you're like Bill Clinton, I didn't exhale, I didn't inhale, but I did smoke a little bit, just a little bit. It's all it takes. It's all it takes. Some of the greatest addictions that people are battling in these days come from just a little bit. So you got to be careful when you're dealing with just a little bit, because just like the yeast, sin only requires just a little bit. Old folks have a saying, you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. You give sin an inch, it's going to take 10,000 miles. So the best thing you can do is to do exactly what Jesus said. Be careful. That's a caution light before it turns into a stoplight. You know what happens when you take the chance of running a stoplight on the road, don't you? You take the chance of dying in a car accident. Well, in life it's no different. Every time you run the caution light, every time you run through the stop words and instructions of Jesus Christ or of God himself, you take the chance and the risk of ending your life. Just a little bit. It's not going to hurt nobody. Lies. It hurts everybody. Because whether you know it or not, the yeast for the Pharisees and for Herod, or the Herodians, those that supported Herod and all of his wrongs and all of his ways and all of his thoughts, just that little bit caused their hearts to be hardened and caused them to have great disbelief for who Jesus said he was. Left them in a place of not wanting to be on his side, but wanting to go against him. How do you go against the Son of God? How do you go against the Son of the one that created all things? Through the moon and the stars in the sky, caused them to shine so bright at night, turns any night into a romantic moment, took the sun and flung it on the opposite side of the sky and said, you know what, in order for you to grow, I need this to shine on you just a little bit more. How do you go against someone who's all-knowing, all-powerful, yet can be in this place and that place all at the same time? How? It's just a little bit. Just a little bit. But not only did Jesus tell them to be careful, here's why it's important and why I said a few moments ago, you have to have regular conversation to understand. Because in Jesus telling them to be careful of the yeast, the Pharisees, they begin to point fingers at one another. It's your fault. We don't have enough bread. Well, you should have reminded me to bring the bread. Well, you should have thought about the bread. And yet here it is. Jesus hears their discussion. Jesus says unto them, why y'all still talking about bread? What's the problem? Y'all really don't understand? Y'all don't really get it? Oh, wait. I get it. So y'all hearts have hardened. Is that why you can't understand the words that I'm speaking that are easily flowing out of my mouth unto your ears? Like what's really going on? If they weren't confused enough, Jesus' question left them more confused. But here's what I want to tell all y'all today. Jesus don't ask questions he doesn't already know the answer to. So whenever you find yourself in a situation or in a place where God isn't giving you direct instruction, but he's asking you questions, understand God ain't like your earthly mother and father. You can't lie to him. You can try. Where you was last night? Why you came home 2 o'clock in the morning? Oh, I was with such and such. I told you last week. Every single lie has a bit of truth in it. You might have been with them, but you wasn't where you said you was with them. But here's what I really need to understand, and I'm trying to understand this. How do we get to the space where Jesus has to ask us questions to simply get us to a space of asking ourselves some questions? I just told you, Jesus already knows the answers to the questions he asks. So he's not asking you for you to answer him. but he's asking you for you to be honest with yourself. It's actually an opportunity for you to just go ahead and say, you know what, Jesus? You might be right. I really don't understand. I really don't get it. I need you to make it plain for me. And here's what it really is. We got to understand that inside of every question that Jesus asks and God asks, there's also a bit of clear instruction. Because God doesn't leave any rock unturned when he speaks unto us. The problem is what I told you. We are not familiar enough with his voice. So it leaves us in a space of trying to interpret what he says. But the problem is we don't just interpret it, we put emotionalism in it. So depending on how I'm feeling that day, that's why you're asking me that. Depending on what I saw that day, that's why you're asking me that. But it's never a moment of real revelation where we sit down and understand he's not asking us that because of somebody else. He's asking us what he's asking, all because we are living a life in the midst of a circumstance and situation that simply says, God, I don't understand all of your commands, all of your laws. I don't understand every bit of your instruction. So when he asks, he's simply giving you a chance to just be honest. So why you can't be honest? Why you can't tell him the truth? Why you can't let him know, God, I'm trying to walk with you. God, I'm trying to talk with you. But I don't understand this prayer thing. I don't understand this faith thing. I don't understand this giving thing. But I'm trying, God. But I need a little bit more instruction on what I'm supposed to be doing. God, you said be careful of the yeast. And you heard us talking about bread. So what we supposed to think you talking about? But here's where we got to really understand the God we serve. He'll tell you one thing to give you insight to another, to help you understand where you really have trouble in your life. Matter of fact, if you really think about it, these disciples had been walking and talking with Jesus. They had seen him perform miracle after miracle, sign after sign, wonder after wonder. Yet they still don't really know who they're on the ship with. And for a lot of us in the world today, we on the ship of life. And we got them in the hinder part, but yet we panicking in the midst of any and every storm. All because we still don't understand who we got on the ship with us. Oh, I could go get him when times get good. Matter of fact, I really don't need to bother him. I can let him sleep. I can just bother him when things get tough and when it gets bad. Here's what you got to see inside of Matthew 8:18. Jesus then says unto them, do you have eyes but fail to see, and ears but fail to hear? Jesus, I got eyes. I see you. I got ears, and I can hear you. But do you really? Do you really hear what God is saying? Do you really see what God is doing? Because a lot of times, our problems get in the way. And we hear more of our problems than his solutions. We see more of our issues than his resolutions. So then Jesus does them one better. Y'all ain't even got to answer none of the questions I just asked y'all. Just answer this one for me. Do you remember? Do we remember what, Jesus? What are you talking about? What are you talking about? James, what Jesus talking about? Peter, what Jesus talking about? I don't really know. Jesus said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to take the confusion away for you. You remember I performed those 2 miracles. Both of them consisted of loaves of bread. Matter of fact, one I fed 5,000 and another I fed 4,000. Do you remember those instances? Let me help you understand. When I fed the 5,000, it was amongst a Jewish community. They expected for the Son of God to do for them what had been done. But when I did the 4,000, it was in the midst of some Gentiles. The ones y'all frown upon, the ones y'all don't like to be around, the ones y'all don't care for. Both of them were done out of compassion. But yet I made sure I took the time to actually tell you amongst the Gentiles, why are you looking at them crazy? I have compassion on these people. And today God wants me to pause for a little while to ask everybody in here, why are you still moving in selective compassion? Why are you still choosing who you going to show love to? Still choosing who you going to be kind to? Still choosing who you going to be merciful to? Still choosing who you going to even have a conversation with? God simply says, Jesus simply says, I'm showing you that I have no respect of person. Whether you like them, whether you hate them, whether you think they are above or beneath, I love all of them, and all of them deserve the same treatment. So today I'm just simply asking us for a second, what's wrong with you that you feel like you still get to pick and choose when you going to show love to somebody? Well, they hurt me real. I get it. I get it. But we've all been hurt. But what if every time you hurt God, God did to you what you do to everybody else? What would that look like? What would life be like then? Yeah. Here's something else that God is pulling on my heart to tell you. Jesus says, when I broke, you thought that every time God broke you, he broke you just for you. See, when you look at the two miracles of the barley loaves, then you really understand that when Jesus breaks you, he ain't breaking you for you. He's breaking you that somebody else can see him mend and heal you and make you whole, so that they can understand the same thing he did with you, he can do with somebody else. Jesus says, when I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000, how many baskets full of pieces did you pick up? The disciples said 12. Jesus then said, okay, you got that math right. So when I did it with the 7 loaves for the 4,000, how many did they have left over for you to pick up? They answered and said 7. Here's what I want to tell you also about these 2 miracles, because we often overlook them. What you got in your hands might not be enough to you, but if you put it in his hands, you'll be surprised at exactly how much you really got. Because here's another bit for you, and we rushing to close, but here's another little piece of information for you. Jesus never asked them for fish. Jesus simply said unto them, give me the loaves. Bring the loaf to me. Never told them, go get some fish. Here's where your blessing and your miracle lies inside of these 2 miracles. If you're simply obedient and follow God's instruction, he's going to give you more than what you thought you needed. Not just for you, but for your mama, your daddy, your sister, your brother, and even your enemies. Because you do know he said that he would sit you at a table in the midst of your enemies and cause your cup to runneth over. Yeah, your run over ain't just for you, but it's for any and everybody that is sitting at your table. But wait a minute, hold up. There's also another scripture in the Bible that talks about the dog eating the crumbs off the table. The ones that you treat like dogs, guess what? They fall up under that overflow that falls off that table. Be careful how you treat people. Your season today, but their season tomorrow. They might be the dogs now, but you might be the dog later. That's that unconditional compassion factor. It says that he did the 5,000, did the 4,000. And Jesus simply says, do you remember? You know what's crazy to me? In the midst of all that Jesus had said unto them, they became consumed with worry that they didn't have enough. Ain't it ironic that we in this time of year, and God took me to Mark 8:14 through 21 to simply tell y'all, stop getting consumed in worries about what you're going to do for the holidays. Stop getting consumed in worries about how many bills you got to pay and still got to buy presents. God simply told me to tell you that all of your worry is a byproduct and a product of a lack of faith and a lack of belief that he is who he says he is. So if that's really the case, then God, how do we counteract when our minds begin to start tripping and slipping and acting real funny and don't allow us to remember what we need to, but remembers more of what the enemy has to say? How do we undo that? God simply said, Lawrence, just tell the people, let's take a little walk. So I need y'all to walk with me for a second, because as I begin to walk while I was studying, I begin to realize something. If I'm walking with him and I'm talking with him, whenever he says something, I've got to be willing to listen to him, but then I've also got to be willing to move with him. He told the disciples, I just really need y'all to remember who I really am. And today, I just came in here just for a little while with a little old Sunday school lesson to tell y'all, you just got to remember who God is. So question is, do you remember who he is? Because sometimes all it takes is a moment of reflection. While you worried about having bread, you forgetting that he the bread of life. While you tripping about having water, you forgetting he is the living water that shall never run dry. While you worried about all of your possessions and all the things you got that money bought for you, you forgetting that he owns all things, even the cattle that graze on 1,000 hills. So here's what I really need you to do for me. Take a little walk with me. Every time you remember, I just need you to take a little step. So I need y'all to stand up for me. This is interaction kind of close. I just need y'all to take a little walk with me for a second. For everything that touches your memory bank, I just need you to take a step. Y'all with me? Okay. I remember when he saved my soul. Take a step if you remember. I remember when he made me whole. Take a step if you remember. I remember how he spared my worthless life. Take another step. I remember how he said all of my battles I would not have to fight. I remember when he pulled me up out of mess and confusion and spared me from all the ridicule and the hate. Take another step if you remember. I remember when he spoke one word and caused the sea of my life to become calm and cause all my storms to dissipate. I remember when he turned me around and showed me the error of my ways and gave me a little more time to do right in his eyes. I remember when he covered me. I remember when he protected me. I remember when he fed me. I remember when he held me. I remember when he loved me. I remember how he never left me. I remember how he saved me. I remember how he holds me. I remember how he dries my weeping eyes. I remember how he healed my aching heart. I remember how he rocks me late in the midnight hour. I remember how he's there every time I call. I remember. Do you remember? Do you remember? Do you remember how good God is? Do you remember who God really is? Do you know that God is above? Do you know that God loves you? But since y'all remember, this topic don't even pertain to y'all. Topic was y'all done forgot. So guess what? God, we're going to flip it. And the topic is, I can't forget. The topic is, I won't forget. The topic is, I never shall forget. I've seen too much. I've heard too much. I've felt too much. And I know too much. Matter of fact, I remember they betrayed him. I remember they led him from judgment hall to judgment hall. I remember they handed him over to be killed and crucified. I remember they put nails in his hands. I remember they drove nails in his feet. I remember they pushed thorns on his head. I remember they pierced him in his side. I remember they took him down off that old rugged cross. I remember they put him in a borrowed tomb. But what I really remember is when the grave thought it had him, when death thought it had won, he got up with all power in the palm of his hands. Power to heal me, power to save me, power to change my mind, power to change my life, power to make me do right when I want to do wrong, power to make me sing when they try to tell me to be quiet. I remember. But most of all, what I remember is this life is not mine. I remember all that he's done for me. And all that he's done for me and that I've seen him do for others. I can never forget that no matter where I go, he's always with me. Always holding my hand. So when times get tough, I just need y'all to remember. Have a moment. Let your mind go back to how you lived before you met him. And think about all the things that have changed since you made up in your mind that you were going to live for Jesus. And simply tell yourself that it can only get better from here because the master is on the ship. And when he's on the ship, no matter what happens, no matter what you think you don't have, he's got every single thing that you need. After Jesus explained all of this unto them, Jesus still asked them one more question. And that question was, do you understand? Today, New Life, I just want to know, do you understand?